Hey, hey, welcome to another episode. I am Dagny.
And I'm Damali.
And in this episode, we want to discuss with you the concept of human creativity. When it comes to our creative minds, our creative lives, but in particular, how we have seen a shift in terms of the value in creativity when it comes to one, people on their own starting to tap into or give themselves permission to be more creative in their lives, as well as in the workforce. So we're seeing that even though there's a shift in people wanting to go more into tech, but we're seeing corporations, whether they're tech or healthcare or other industries that before were deemed to be not creative, are now choosing, wanting, expressing the need of wanting more creative people in their businesses and corporations. So in terms of what we're going to be touching on in this episode, overall, we wanted to reflect on these shifts that are happening, creativity in our own lives, in order to possibly, if this resonates with you listening, encourage you to continue, if you're not already, giving yourself permission to have more creativity in your life. Take ownership of your own creativity, but understanding what that means. So to start, we wanted to go into definitions, all right? Because creativity, people usually put that in one particular category. If I say this person's creative, what do you automatically think of? Somebody is painting, somebody's doing music, somebody's dancing. You go into that realm of like somebody in the arts program in your school, okay? So what we wanted to first start with is that actually, according to articles and studies, there is a difference between creativity and art or being artistic. So Damon, I'm going to pass it back to you, throw it back to you to get us started with these differences between creativity and artistry.
All right. We tend to think they're one and the same, and they're not. Being creative doesn't necessarily have to have anything to do with art. Creativity could be about formulating ideas or creating new things or problem solving, and then for being when it comes to artistic, it's more about making something that's more tangible, right? So if you think of like, I don't know, the Mona Lisa, which of course everyone is always talking about the Mona Lisa. Is she smiling or not? We don't know. But yeah, that's the main difference between them. And in this podcast, we want to talk about how everyone, I suppose not everyone maybe can be artistic, but everyone could be creative. I think that some people think that if you're not in the arts or into music or things like that, you're like, oh, I'm not being creative. And it's like, no, you probably use your creativity skills like every day, actually, even like figuring out how to, I don't know, use something, or even if you're, I don't know, cooking or something, or trying to figure out, or you're in a group and you're trying to delegate tasks to people or to create something. So yeah, I think art, when it comes to art, it's but more of the music and the painting and things like that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't have the creativity in something else. So yeah, that's the start.
And what I also liked about, which will link these different articles that we were researching or utilizing to prepare for this episode. What I liked also was this notion, at least when they were trying to make the distinction, was how creativity has more to do with your ideas and your mindset. And that is something that you can utilize in everything, whether it's in your own life, it's whatever job, with interactions, just the way in which you problem solve, the way in which you create new ideas, the way in which you think or navigate how your reality can fall under the category of creativity. And if you're and the more creative you are, or the more you allow yourself to be creative, the more you can possibly think outside of the box, the more you can possibly shift away from routine or shift away from rules or shift away from what has already been done and come up with something new. While art is like, at least the way they described it, is like art is the result of creativity, as in art is the physical result, which can be the painting, can be the music, can be the literature, can be the film, can be the fashion design, can be a new Pantone color. It's something physical or tangible that you can either see, hear, what else is there? Read. taste, right? Food is also art in itself, right?
Yeah, you could say that's art as well.
Yeah. So it's basically anything tangible that I think taps into your senses that you can experience is where art comes from. So I liked how they noted how art actually does not require creativity because a lot of it is copy and paste of what's already been done and just add a new font or add a new color. While creativity can do both of being connected to art or not be connected to art at all. So when we're talking about in this discussion about, what is creativity or what does it mean to you? Or how does it add value to your life? We wanted to start with this definition so you understand that when we're talking about creativity, we're not only asking, did you paint something today? It's more about like, have you checked yourself in terms of your mindset? And are you allowing yourself to think outside of the box? Are you allowing yourself to actually resolve or solve things, work out solving things on your own, as opposed to just following instructions? Yeah. And so to continue with that, I think we can then speak more on how we are seeing creativity and the arts shifting in terms of reputation when it comes to corporations, when it comes to industries, when it comes to education. So at least in my lifetime, and I'm going to say Damali's lifetime too, there's been this reputation of creativity and art being kind of seen as one and the same. And creativity is really okay if you're a kid. If you're a kid, we can do the games, we can play, we can do the painting, we can play pretend, we can use your imagination. And then at a certain age, you need to start completely just letting that go because you're supposed to get into something serious because you need to be an adult at some point in time. And then that further goes along because even when you go off into, okay, now you finish grade school, and if you are going on to get degrees or certifications, the creative or arts program tends to be something that feels like an afterthought, or it's something that you did that because that you couldn't get into anything else. And then the sad thing is that also in our lifetime, seeing that even grade schools, their art programs have been defunded, where now even those types of activities we had as a kid, a lot of schools are not even providing that anymore because there's no reason to pay for an art teacher. There's no reason to pay for a theater teacher to be a part of your curriculum. And so it's interesting now to see, which I do think has happened maybe in the past 4 years, where because we've had this shift of people wanting to be hybrid or remote, and with that, there's like a new wave of positions and opportunities that weren't around before. We are now seeing that the same industries that kind of, I want to be just stating facts, we're kind of dismissive about creativity and arts. This is the STEM, the science, technology, and medicine. Yeah. Or mathematics. Wait, is it medicine or mathematics? What is the M for? I'm sorry.
No, it's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
Okay. So, because medicine, I guess, would be in the science category, right?
I suppose so, yes.
I guess, yeah? Yes. Okay, fine. Mm-hmm. So it's fascinating now that STEM, which has had a supportive advocacy, we need more people in STEM, like everybody try and get your kids to be in that. It's interesting that now STEM is starting to transform into STEAM, as in we're adding an A to the word for arts. And now we're seeing a lot of these tech corporations, large scale and small startup scale, are proactively asking, we need people in the arts background. We need people with the writing background. We need people with the film background. We need people with the communications background. We need people with the so-called, quote unquote, soft skills. Because even that, insisting creativity is soft instead of hard. It's like, why do we do that? But do you see, so it's interesting that this shift is happening where now they need that. And to discuss on why is that happening? Is just because you need them. And from what I've noted, not only the articles we read, but also some of the discussions I've been a part of or participated in, because I even going into futuristic stuff like Web3 and AI and things like that. there is this gap where, because, and I think might be a connection as to what we just noted about the defunding of creative and arts, or how we've been dismissive of it, is that you will push people in STEM. And these are people who only see things for the code or black and white. Mm-hmm. And so even though they're brilliant at what they programmed, they can't actually describe it in a way that makes sense to everybody else who doesn't program things. Mm-hmm. This is where you need the communications person or the film person or the writing person who can translate why this software is important, this product is important, in terms that a regular person would be like, oh yeah, that sounds like something that would solve my problem. While the engineer or the software developer, whoever else, has for some time, apparently, allegedly, and supposedly, had difficulty doing that or explaining it. I think another reason is that, especially for the tech corporations where your business model is you're trying to create products for people to purchase, I think also because there has also been a shift in consumer behavior where we're not just going to buy anything just because you produced it. It needs to have a story. It needs to have some sort of meaning. It needs to align with my problem. Like, consumers, I think, are a bit more, on the one hand, possibly a bit more selfish or a bit more self-centered about what they want to purchase, compared to maybe decades before, where it was a bit more about, well, you got to keep up with the Joneses, so we all need this particular vacuum cleaner. And if you don't, like, what are you doing? Like, I'm just saying, while now it's kind of like there's so many, I guess, niches in terms of what people are into, if you want it eco-friendly or not, if you want it battery powered or not, what's the size, what's the weight, will it work for somebody who's short? Would it work for somebody who's tall? Like, now you do need to accommodate for a variety of desires and needs. That it's possible the programmer can't really translate that for you, while the advertising person, the creative person, the film person, the artistic person can, because they will bring imagination. Now, not to say STEM people don't have an imagination, but tying it back to the way education curriculums have been treating creativity and art, it's possible a lot of their imagination might not be tapped into just yet, because of the type of work they do doesn't ask for that in that way. Mm-hmm. So for me, I feel like it's fascinating to see how this is going to evolve, because it does mean that, well, now you need to redefine the reputation that you forced on creativity and arts, where now it should not be something that's dismissed, but it also definitely needs to be something that's paid for at its value. And what I've noted is that even though, okay, we're going to move into STEAM and everybody wants some kind of creative art director in their tech place, but are you paying them the same as you're paying your engineer or your senior programmer or your senior developer? Regardless if they're part of the corporation or as a freelance independent person. And from what I've noticed, we still have some way to go in terms of truly understanding the value of creativity and art in a financial sense of what you're going to pay for.
Right. Yeah. I think that's true. Yeah. It's almost like before it was like an after. Like, arts people are always like an afterthought or like a butt of the joke or something, like, oh, you guys won't be able to get a job, all the thing, mm-hmm. Or like, or your jobs would be, which of course is not, always true. I mean, there are many arts people that become very successful and make a lot of money and things like that. And then, there's just a kind of thing where for engineers and stuff like that, they tend to sometimes think more in black and white, whereas more creative people can think more ambiguously. And then I think in the article also mentioned how, like, this in some parts of engineering or some parts of technology, maybe we are having some lack of ideas that we're having, or we're having trouble thinking up different ideas. And it seems to bring in more creative people, so then they can help deal with that kind of slight void of like, oh, we don't know what else to think about now. Whereas a creative person can be like, oh, well, maybe we'll do this, or maybe we'll do that, or we'll do different things like that. And so I think that now and so we're having more. Before it was kind of like, oh, if you're in the arts, then you can't there's no way that you can get into tech, right? As if they're not connected, kind of thing, or kind of thing. And then and also there's this quote that came up. I think it was about Steve Jobs. Was there no Steve Jobs, but Apple and things like that. And in the quote, Steve Jobs says something to the effect where he thinks that arts and technology are like married together, like they're not a separate thing. He said technology alone is not enough. It's technology married with liberal arts, married with humanities that yields us the results that make our hearts sing. Um, and of course, if we think about the Apple phones, it's not only about the tech of the Apple phone, right? There's like the look of the phone, there's the feel of the phone, there's I mean, even if you go into the advertisements, where it's almost like it's a phone, but we make the phone look sexy, which is it's weird. Like, why? It's a phone, right? But then you see the ads, and you're just like, this is a sexy phone, and everyone wants to go and get it. And that's not only the engineer part, right? Because the engineer person is the one who's creating the phone, right? Making it, putting stuff in. But the person that's like describing it and then having the look of the phone. Because I'm sure everyone, I mean, the same thing that we said about cars, like when you look at the whole point of a car is just to drive it, right? People to drive it. But I'm sure people have been like, oh, this car is ugly, or this car is pretty, or I don't like the way this, which all has something to do with like the arts in a sense. And I think, there's been, and this has also been a thing in schools too, where it's always like the, at the engineering part, the sports part get more of the money, and then the arts, whenever it comes, oh, we're losing money, one of the first places that gets defunded is the arts program, because we're always kind of like, oh, we don't really need that, kind of thing, which is not necessarily true, right? And then when you think about, I think even with there's another article I had read about the cost. Like they're saying how engineering people and arts people, the engineers tend to make more money. And apparently, I think there was a poll about it where it's like when they first start, I think the engineer people might be making more money, but then as you go to like 10 years from now, 20 years from now, the gap is not that big. And oftentimes arts people, as they get higher or more into their field, they end up making like this same amount of money as an engineer person also. So we also can't use that other layer of, oh, if you do, you can't make money with arts. Like, not necessarily, if we're looking at the bigger picture and all the different details and things like that. And so I think as time has gone on, especially if we're going more into like, oh, we want to do more AI stuff, and we're finding more technology, ways to using technology to make life easier, or make life safer, and not safer not only because of like crime, but safer because of the world is kind of hot right now. It's really hot, either really really hot or really, really cold, a little bit too cold. As we said before, the polar bears are skinny. They're not supposed to be skinny. And trying to use technology in a way to help ourselves. And even the other day, I think I watched this video of like this car that the wheels turn in a way that help you parallel park. So like, I don't know if everyone knows how parallel parking works. Either you're good at it or you're not, right? And even if you're good at it, it can be kind of stressful to do the parallel parking because it's been kind of annoying. And they figure out this car where the tires move, and then the car itself will parallel park for you while you're in the car, right? And so that is, it's not art, but that's creative, right? That's a creative idea of how to make things easier for people when they're driving, right? Or make things safer, things like that. And so it does seem they're having more of a shift. I still don't know. Yeah, I don't know why we always have like hard skills versus soft skills and all of that stuff. I mean, I remember that being a thing where you first in college, when you first start doing like career stuff or looking up what career do you want, or let's figure this out. And then you're like, oh, make sure on your resume you put down your soft skills and your hard skills and all this stuff. I'm like, isn't it just all skills? Why are we making it like, what exactly does soft mean? Like, what? Like, I don't understand. If you need it for the job, you need it for the job, right? It's just a skill. And so, but yeah, it does seem that there is kind of a change in that. Of trying to, as Steve Jobs had said in his quote, marry it together, kind of thing. I mean, we can't but for the separation is not so much of a thing now, because we need more ideas and things like that. And then even and I think also both can inspire art can inspire technology, and technology can inspire art, right? Um, and I kind of should I bring up Leonardo da Vinci? He comes to
Might
mind
as
now.
well. Let's go into it.
Might as well, since
Yes.
we're there. But okay, so for Leonardo da Vinci, I think but most people know him. He's the whole Mona Lisa person who created the Mona Lisa. That we still don't know if she's smiling or just looking into our souls. We never know. But this took like 15, 16 years to create the Mona Lisa and everything. But what people might not know is he didn't only do painting. We only hear about, or at least on this, I mean, in the West, I guess we hear about the painting, but actually he was like he was kind of like an engineer, like straight up.
Mm-hmm.
Like he would, in terms of architecture, like he would create certain buildings that were not heard of in his time of, was that 15th, 14th century? I don't know, a Renaissance, I don't know, something like that. And like he would build like buildings that no one knew about. That's why I feel like a lot of artists sometimes can tell the future, because he would build these really cool architectures that wasn't made yet and was not used until later. Like and he would even make, like, if you can say, like, now we have the term green building, but even make like green building type things that help with like the weather or things like that. And even creating I think there was a certain staircase he made. Oh, well, if you face the staircase like this and it's easier to get into the building, things like that. And of course I thought he was like the artist, right? He's supposed to be an artist just doing the Mona Lisa thing, but he was able to use his art as well to do engineering and things like that. And then Dagny, I know you added another. You wanted to add the other
Yes, sure.
thing
I'll
that you
add, but on the
discovered,
Da
the Da
Vinci, yes,
Vinci
on the Da
thing.
Vinci side, because
Yeah.
I had visited last year. I visited Italy to go to an eyewear conference and expo. Because it was in Milan, they also had this Leonardo da Vinci exhibit museum, which I was like, bet I'm going, because like when next am I going to be here? And what was lovely was that it actually was museums primarily focused on his inventions. So he wasn't only a painter or an architect, he really was actually an inventor. And so he invented a time machine and actually built it. He invented, I didn't get to use it because I wasn't allowed to touch it, but I'm sure it works. Okay. And then also he invented something that they were not planes at that time, but he invented some kind of contraption that you sit in it and it has wings and you can glide off the ground with it. Right. And able to utilize stuff where you don't have batteries, but still be able to use water and wind to power stuff for it to be some kind of like a locomotive type thing. And so that in itself takes note of the beauty the beauty to witness when you can see somebody who does give themselves permission to have that growth mindset of allowing creativity, art, inventions, science, all of it can be in the same space. You don't have to dissect them or make them mutually exclusive, and see what kind of results the person can get. Like, is a time machine or his inventions art? Since technically they are a physical something that happened outside of his ideas. We could maybe put it in that, in addition to the paintings and the sculptures that he did. So it's beautiful to see that. And I guess, yes, he was in his time because it was the Renaissance time. So it made sense to be pushing outside of the box when it came to what people can be doing if you are considered the artist or not. And I think to connect that to now, where we have even more access compared to the access he had, other than probably using his time machine to see what we were doing and then go back and do stuff. Other than that, the fact that now we have so much access to the technology that allows us to do stuff without needing a whole team to do it, as well as knowledge that you maybe don't necessarily need to go to school for all the time, or don't need to go through a gatekeeper to get to. It just feels like, well, in this era, this should be Renaissance 5.0 now, because it should be even more normal to give ourselves permission to merge all of those things together to invent more. And I think that's something that, in the Renaissance era, we had so many inventors. Same with after maybe the Victorian era also, there was a lot of inventors. And then now it's okay, what are we inventing?
Yeah.
that not necessarily that you have to like something completely different that nobody's seen before. Cause it's like, I still don't see the Jetsons out here yet. So I guess we're not there yet. But what are we inventing outside of being inspired by everybody else and then just kind of continuing the same mold as everybody else? How many of us are really tapping into the inventions that are within us, which does require you to allow yourself to merge the creativity, the art, the science, all of those things, to allow that to happen. And not to say that we need to totally take Da Vinci as a blueprint, because of course he was also sponsored to be an inventor. It wasn't like he's just doing it by himself while also trying to juggle a 9-to-5 and side hustles and make money in his sleep. Like, someone sponsored him to do these things, right? It's a different circumstance.
Yeah.
But I agree that I think which now I think segues into that growth mindset portion that we also read about, where I think it's good time, if you resonate with this, you listening, that we do give ourselves permission to allow us to exist outside of the box. So just because you are in one industry, maybe you studied in one industry or you've been trained in one industry, doesn't mean there is no capacity for you to attach or allow a different set of skills or industries to also be in play there. So yes, you are a software developer, but that doesn't mean you also cannot do architecture, or that doesn't mean you also cannot do music. That doesn't mean you also cannot do education curriculum. Like those things, your skill set and your creativity, if you're allowing it to evolve, can also contribute to those spaces as well. Like it's so beautiful sometimes when you see somebody who's an architect who also does art, because the way they will do the painting and stuff, it is different because your creativity is coming from architecture, geometry vibe. And so your paintings are so really beautiful, but you can tell it's very different from someone who's painting, but their industry is completely different from that. Or really their industry is actually just art.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it beautiful. So I think allowing ourselves to think outside of the box and pivot when needed, because your expertise actually fit in these different spaces. And it doesn't mean you have to drop what you were doing before, or it doesn't mean the skills you picked up in something in the industry are wasted. Like for me personally, yes, I've always been creative in terms of having the vivid imagination, having different ways of solving problems and ideas. And then on the side, either as a kid or older on the side, I would be artistic just for my own thing, but never actually like studied it or did it as that's the industry I'm in. And then later, at least for the past recent years, pivoting to allow myself to not need to compartmentalize and exclude them or separate them, but actually allow them to merge. So the creativity and the artistry can be merged into business. It can also be merged into advocacy. It can also be merged into communications. Like instead of insisting it's something separate, it can be together, which allows, I think for me anyway, I find it fascinating because it allows one to I think expand your problem solving skills and expand just expanding your perspective. Like you're able to see an even bigger picture of how all these different things connect, as opposed to only looking at one industry as if it's in a silo or in a vacuum on its own. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you don't have to be confined to one thing. I think we tend to think it's like an isolation where you can only do engineering or art and that's it. But you can kind of use different interests. And I think having different interests can give you a different background, right? If with any job that you have, you can always use like kind of everything that you learn, right? You don't have to put yourself in like one box and be like, oh, I'm only this, so I can't do all of these things. And there's more of a push too to do my creative ideas. And even if you say across like different countries and stuff, like of course I'm like was living in China. And for some students in China have this some of their schooling is very you kind of like you learn the items in the book, and that's what you learn, and then that's all you need to know is that okay, you have the information, boom, kind of thing. But even in China, I think there's some ways a push of trying to do more thinking more creatively, or having more of a critical thinking, and like not only like yes, follow what's in the book, but you also want to like expand on that. Um, and I think that that's a push that's happening everywhere also, where we're trying to, well, we need more creative ideas, right? And everyone can use that. And then when it comes to, especially in like another way, is like how life can be kind of hard, right? And there's a lot of so we need solutions for things, and we need to solve problems, right? And I think if we can think in more creatively, then we're able to expand our minds and help ourselves. Like if you're going through a tough time, and you can only think of one way to get out of the tough time, but that one way is not working, you have to creativity is part of thinking of another way to fix something. So instead of thinking, oh, there's only one way I can fix this, be like, oh, actually, if I think differently, there's 10 different ways that I can get out of this problem. And then that also can make life smoother, right? Because then you have more ideas to figure out what to do. And also, of course, the more ways you can figure something out or fix something or use something, that also can help you, right? So then you are able to, that's how you're expanding your mind and your ideas and things like that. And I do think that a lot of companies now are looking for that more, more of like, how do you think of ideas together, and how do you work with other people that also have different ideas and things like that. And I think we brought it up before about like when you're working with a team, it's not so much about the um like whether you have the same values or not, or it's more about like, are my ideas being heard, and can you discuss ideas without people feeling like, oh well, my idea's going to be stupid, or no one's going to listen to me, so I'm not going to speak up. And also, I think it also expands into the creativity thing, where when I think of creative, I think of like you can put it's in everything, and even the way that you do things, like even studying, like, oh, I need to study everything in the book, is even the way you memorize things for a test, right? We think of creative ways to memorize things, like, oh, how will I remember this? Do I write it 7 times? Do I get note cards? Do I like put it in my phone? Like that in itself is a creative thing, and it's not necessarily connected with the arts or just like music and things like that. Um, and for me also, I think that I think there's been this thing also with some students who have a lot of energy, and we are like, oh my god, they have too much energy. What do we do with them? And I think it's because their creative juices are not being tapped into. Um, and I think I even read this article about how like if you it's some people that this is going more into, I guess, if you are more creative, or have a lot of ideas in your head but you don't know how to get them out. It's like you need more dopamine in your brain. For something, people, it's kind of veering a little bit on a different topic, but how like some creative people need more they need like a certain level of pleasure in their brain that makes them feel good. And if they don't get to that point, they can get kind of bored, right? And sometimes, I know if you hear of the student who couldn't sit still in class, or like was always got bored very easily, and that's part of because they weren't using their ideas enough. And I guess if I think about me specifically, I think had that. There are times, I mean, I've calmed down a little bit, but when I was younger, there were some times where I have like a lot of energy, I want to, and a lot of things I want to do. And then I found that I got bored easily. So like I'm switching in different things. And if things were too slow, or or I wasn't that, or I got bored about it, and it was hard to complete certain things. Um, and then even if I look at some of my old notebooks and stuff, all like these crazy ideas and drawings I would just draw like the weirdest things to get like the energy out of my brain, kind of thing. There's so many things going on in my head all the time, and like if I can't settle it or deal with it, then there's a lot of untapped energy. Um, and so I think that's another part where people are creative in different ways also. And I think it seems we're getting more and more. We need that more. We need more of like the different ideas, and especially when it comes to like even to bring into AI. We're talking about technology. But with AI, I think there was like this conference, online conference I was in for my job, and like one of the notes I took from the conference was something about how we need more of the only humans can be creative, was what one of the thoughts were. Where for AI, as awesome as robots and AI are, they can't be creative the way humans can.
Mhm.
Right? Because humans, we can think of things spontaneously, randomly. We can connect random things that have nothing to do with each other and make something out of it. Whereas a robot or AI cannot, right? Because AI, you just tell us to do that thing and then that's it. Like they can't think. Humans are the ones that think outside of the box, kind of thing. And we still, that's still a skill that we still need. And I think that we would need those. I guess they called them like future ready skills, was what they called them with human creativity, and how it's still needed. And I even remember watching this. There's some video I watched where there was like a robot, and the robots were taking over or something, as we always act like they're going to take over. And then there was like the human in the room that needed help with a paper or something, or a poem, and the robot was going to try to do it themselves. And the robot went to go back in time to go see a poet that died years ago, and the poet was just writing and everything. And the poet was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, try to write a poem." And then the robot like freaked out and like exploded, kind of thing. And the AI robot was like, okay, I think we still need humans, kind of thing. So it was that point where, yeah, we still need humans are kind of, that's where the creativity comes from, right? And the way that we think about stuff. And we would need that, because you can't, I guess the point is that you can't use AI for everything, right? You can't use AI to, think of all the things that humans can. So of course, that as another layer of why it's important to be creative. And there's different levels of creative. Like, of course, there's the people who are like geniuses, right? Who like created something that was never made before, right? But even if you're not a genius, you can still be creative, right? You can still, and I think you can teach. I suppose there's people think that some people are born. Some people, yes, are born with a certain level of creativity, but I think you can also expand your own mind and teach yourself to be more creative, right? Just in the way you think about life, or solve problems, or figure out how can I use this item in one way, or can I use it in 10 different ways, kind of thing. That could even be creative, right? Or the way you decide to give a speech, right? Or the way that you decide to rule a group, or things like that. And I think, so I think everyone can be creative in different ways, and it shouldn't be seen as like, oh no, only artists are creative, or only like these type of people can be blah, blah, blah. And I don't think that's necessarily true on that point. So, yeah.
All right. I agree. And I think to wrap up in terms of...
As we keep wrapping up.
In terms of suggestions for you listening, one, definitely want to hear from you if you think you already are thinking creatively. But in terms of tips, if you feel like you could do more, right? I feel like she noted, in terms of checking yourself of how you do think of things, how you solve problems. Have you been following the same routine forever? Can you create something different? Can you think of another option? Can you almost like, what's that game? Almost like, I feel like when our minds are trying to solve problems, there are so many different lanes that it can solve a problem. And if you look at it in that analogy of a game, or like a lab, or a maze with multiple, or labyrinth, yes. And if you see it in that way, have you been just taking the same route for every problem because that's the route you're used to? Have you ever bothered to check, like, what if I turned left? What would the option be of that, or right? Or what if I just come doing a zigzag? To allow yourself to discover different ways to navigate what you need to be using your creativity for, as well as continuing to believe in yourself that it is already in you. It might be a very much untapped, because, like we noted in this discussion, how a lot of it possibly was not valued. And so you kind of just put it to the side because, well, no one's asking for it. but it's something that you really can utilize in everything, not only if you're trying to paint something. And I think, and I think in terms of, and that's also a good note of when these ideas do come to you, make sure you write them down. Make sure you note them, because I do believe that creativity is part of a divine connection, depending on what you believe in, of what that bigger divine connection could be. But the fact that so much ideas tend to always be like, this person must be ahead of their time, because how could they possibly come up with such a thing if it was like nothing like this has ever been done or been seen in this way or been felt in this way. I do think creativity is part of that like divine download as well. So it's important to respect that by actually writing it down, taking note of it, trying to explore, okay, now that I have the idea, what could be the next step, or who should I interact with, or how could I solve this now that I have this idea? I think it could also be actually like a beautiful spiritual experience too. And this is not, and again, this doesn't have to be monetized all the time either. Creativity can also be just something for you. It could be something for the people around you, or it could be a multi 12-figure, 28-figure, 93-figure business, right? So, but I think determining where that goes starts with you actually valuing your creativity. It starts with you respecting it. And hopefully that is a ripple effect for more of us to actually automatically respect it, value it, and support it as needed. Yeah. So we hope you enjoyed this episode. And as always, we love hearing from you. Let us know what you think, and go forth and prosper and be creative. And we will catch you on the next episode.
Right. Yeah. Stay loved, stay blessed, and stay creative. Bye.
Bye. Take care.